A 48-year-old fisherman, James Lawson, had been navigating the waters off the coast of Point Reyes, California, for over 2 decades. He knew the rocky shoreline like the back of his hand, each cove, each twist in the tide, each unpredictable gust of wind. But one morning, as the fog lifted over the ocean, something was different. There, half buried in the sand near a secluded cove, he saw it, a rusted chest, out of place, as if it had been there for centuries, or just yesterday. James had found plenty of things before: driftwood, ship debris, even an old anchor. But this was unlike anything he'd seen. The chest's heavy metal frame glinted in the early morning light, but something about it didn't feel right. His instincts told him to leave it alone, but curiosity pulled him closer. When the authorities arrived and opened the chest, they turned pale. What they found inside, James would never forget. Would you dare to open it? Subscribe to find out what happened next. James Lawson's morning always started the same. Wake up at 4:30 a.m. sharp, lace up his weathered boots, and head out to the modest fishing boat he'd named the Maribel after his late wife. He'd fished these shores of Point Reyes since he was a boy, taught by his father, who was taught by his father before him. At 48, he was the kind of man whose silence said more than his words ever could. A man molded by salt water, solitude, and tides that respected no one. July 17th began like any other. The sky was overcast, the ocean calm, and the air thick with the briny scent of kelp and mist. James had planned a short trip that morning. He wanted to check his traps before the weekend crowd flooded the docks. The tourists would arrive soon, eager for boat tours and tales of ghost ships and sea monsters. But James had no use for stories. He dealt in nets, fish, and quiet. That was his rhythm, until that day. Around 7:45 a.m., as the sun broke timidly through the fog, James docked the Maribel near a narrow inlet known to the locals as Driftwood Hollow. The beach here was a wild tangle of bleached branches and sea debris, a place the tides used like a dumping ground. He'd come to collect a few wayward crab traps that had drifted in, but something else caught his eye. It wasn't big, not at first, just a patch of something, dull brown and metallic, peeking through the sand near a large driftwood log. He almost didn't notice it, but the way the sunlight hit it, just for a second, it glinted like wet steel. Intrigued, James stepped closer. The object was partially buried, crusted with rust and barnacles. At first he thought it might be part of an old buoy or even a sunken boat fragment. But the corners, they were too square, too precise. He knelt, brushing the damp sand away with calloused fingers. More of the shape revealed itself: a lid, heavy hinges, a thick iron loop at the front, a chest. It looked old, not just old, ancient. The kind of thing pirates might have buried if you believed in that sort of thing. But this wasn't the Caribbean. This was Point Reyes, and as far as James knew, no pirate ships had ever dropped anchor here. Still, the chest was real, and it was here. His heart started to beat a little faster, not with fear, but with something even more dangerous for a man like James: curiosity. He grabbed a crowbar from his boat and returned to the chest. The thing was heavy and stubborn. He dug around it with his boots and pried carefully at the seams. The metal creaked and groaned, reluctant to give up its secrets. And as the sand fell away, James saw something else. Markings etched faintly along the rim. Symbols, maybe letters, but not in any language he recognized. It was like they had been burned into the iron long ago, now half erased by salt and time. Something about those marks made him pause. James had seen weird things wash up on shore: dead jellyfish in the shape of hands, tangled nets that looked like bones, even a message in a bottle once, written in French. But nothing like this. The chest didn't belong here. That much was certain. It didn't look like it came from any shipwreck he'd ever heard of, and it certainly hadn't been left by accident. He stood up, stared at it for a long moment. Then he did something he didn't often do. He stepped back. Years on the sea had taught him to trust his gut, and right now, it was twisting in a way that told him this wasn't just a curious find. Something about the air around it felt off, colder than it should be. And the seagulls? Normally, they'd be squawking and circling, eager to pick at anything James disturbed, but they were quiet, too quiet. James reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and took a few pictures of the chest. Then he hesitated. Should he open it? Part of him said no. Leave it. Call someone. Get help. But another part, the part buried under years of routine and silence, urged him forward. What could possibly be inside? Gold, bones, weapons, or maybe something worse? He slid the crowbar beneath the lid once more. This time it gave a little. A soft groan echoed from the metal as if it resented being awakened. He stopped. Something told him he shouldn't be alone if he was going to open it fully. Instead, he took a deep breath, stepped away from the chest again, and did something even more out of character. He called 911. When the dispatcher answered, James tried to explain what he'd found, but the words felt clumsy in his mouth. It's a chest, he said finally. Metal, old, really old, with some kind of writing on it. Found it on Driftwood Hollow Beach. I don't know what's in it, but I think someone needs to see it. There was a pause on the other end. A chest? The woman repeated, uncertain. Can you describe it? James did his best. She asked if it could be a hazard. Military, chemical, anything dangerous. He said he didn't know. Couldn't say. But something about it didn't feel right. All right, she said finally. Stay there. Don't touch it again. We're sending someone. By the time James hung up, the fog had lifted completely, revealing a blue sky stretched above the jagged cliffs of the coastline. The world had gone back to normal, but the chest, it hadn't changed. It still sat there, half buried and defiant, as if daring someone to try and unlock it. He stood watch over it for what felt like an hour. During that time, his mind wandered. What if it was something valuable or dangerous? What if it was evidence of a crime, long buried and never meant to be found? Or something even more bizarre, something that couldn't be explained? The first to arrive was a local deputy named Carla Mendez. She knew James, had bought fresh salmon from him more than once. When she saw him standing beside the chest, arms crossed, she slowed her approach. Hey, James, she said cautiously. What have you got there? He motioned silently to the object at his feet. Her eyes narrowed. She walked closer, knelt, and examined the chest without touching it. Then she stood, pulled out her radio, and called in for backup. I don't know what this is, she said quietly to James, but you were right to call. I think we're going to need the Coast Guard for this one. James nodded slowly. He had no idea that in just a few hours this stretch of beach would be swarmed with officials, that a full investigation would begin, or that news cameras would eventually roll over this forgotten patch of sand. All he knew, deep in his bones, was that he'd found something no one was supposed to. And whatever it was, it had been waiting a very long time. But waiting for what? And for who? Before the experts arrived, before the crowd, before the floodlights and yellow tape, James looked down one last time at the chest. The symbols stared back at him, ancient and cryptic, and something about them seemed to move in the light. Now I want to ask you, what do you think James really found buried in the sand? An ancient relic? Military tech? Something cursed, maybe? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're enjoying this mysterious journey, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. And tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We'd love to know. The real story is just getting started. The arrival of the authorities felt almost surreal. Within minutes, the sound of sirens filled the air, echoing off the nearby cliffs. The first vehicle to roll in was a Coast Guard SUV, kicking up dust as it turned onto the narrow road that led to Driftwood Hollow. Behind it, a police cruiser followed. James stood to the side as the officers poured out, and Carla Mendez gave him a brief nod. They were all professionals, but there was something different in the way they approached the scene, as if the air had shifted, something unspoken, like a shift in the atmosphere that made everyone suddenly aware of how unusual this moment truly was. A young Coast Guard officer named Brian appeared first. He was tall, with a sharp jawline and the posture of someone who had seen his share of rough seas, but even he didn't seem prepared for what he saw. James, you sure about this? Brian asked, eyeing the chest warily. What exactly are we looking at here? Just look for yourself, James replied, nodding toward the chest. He didn't know how else to explain it, not in any rational way. The whole thing felt too odd. Brian stepped forward, crouching next to the chest and running a gloved hand over its rusty surface. The Coast Guard officer's face tightened, and he gave a low whistle, clearly impressed by the object's ancient condition. His partner, a woman named Claire, stood a few feet back, her arms crossed as she watched cautiously. Definitely old, Brian muttered, but it doesn't make sense. Why would something like this be here? The tides are unpredictable, but something like this doesn't just wash up. It's too big, too heavy. Claire, the other officer, stepped forward now, looking at James. What do you think it is? I don't know, James admitted, the weight of the unknown pressing on his chest. But when I opened it, the thing moved. At least, that's what it felt like. Something inside. Like it was alive. Or waiting. I don't know how else to describe it. Claire glanced at her partner, then back at the chest. Alive? That's strange. Before anyone could speak further, a police van arrived, along with 2 more officers, Detectives Jones and Marlowe. Both were in their late 40s, professional, but the sight of the chest immediately had them speaking in low, serious tones. Anything? Jones asked Carla. I don't know yet, Carla answered, stepping aside to let the detectives take a closer look. But we're going to need to secure the area. I don't think it's just some old junk. As they moved closer, Brian and Claire opened their equipment kits, pulling out specialized tools to lift the chest. The officers worked quickly, determined to get the chest open without disturbing whatever might be inside. James stayed back, watching, the weight of his discovery suddenly pressing down on him. He felt the pull of an invisible thread. Something more than simple curiosity kept him tethered to the spot. For the next few minutes, the group of professionals moved around the chest, studying its locks, hinges, and the faint carvings that adorned its surface. No one could quite decipher the markings, but they were beginning to realize something unsettling. The chest wasn't just old, it was something else. It was meticulously made, crafted with an attention to detail that suggested it was designed to survive for centuries. Something meant to be hidden, kept from the world. And that only raised more questions. Detective Jones crouched down beside it, his brow furrowed. How deep is it buried? He asked. Not very deep, James replied. About a foot, give or take, but it feels heavier than it looks. We'll get a crane out here soon, Jones said. In the meantime, we need to be careful. This could be something from a long time ago, and there's no telling if it's safe. Carla nodded, her gaze fixed on the chest. We need to get the bomb squad out here, she said slowly. Could be anything inside. I'd rather be safe than sorry. James felt his stomach twist. Bomb squad. Could it really be something dangerous? Had he just stumbled onto something far worse than he'd realized? The thought of a bomb, hidden away in a chest for God knows how long, suddenly felt like a cruel joke. Before James could voice his concern, Detective Marlowe stepped closer to the chest. He wiped the back of his hand across his forehead and muttered, almost to himself, "This doesn't make sense. It doesn't belong here." "What do you mean?" Claire asked, stepping closer. "I don't know," Marlowe said slowly. "But it looks too precise, too well crafted for it to just be debris from a wreck. There's something intentional about this. It's like someone planned for this thing to be here." As the officers discussed the chest in quiet murmurs, James couldn't help but wonder who had placed it there and why. It wasn't just that the chest felt out of place. It was as if someone had gone through a great deal of effort to ensure it was hidden, protected from the elements, and then left for what? Who could have wanted it to stay buried all these years? Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, and yet no one seemed ready to open the chest. Everyone was hesitant, unsure about what might lie inside. James could sense the tension growing in the group. Everyone had the same thought. The chest was a mystery, a dangerous one, and no one knew how deep it went. Eventually, a truck arrived carrying the heavy machinery needed to lift the chest carefully from the sand. The crane's motor rumbled as it lowered its hook and attached it to the chest's large loop. The entire crew backed up, watching in silence as the chest was carefully raised from its resting place. Every inch it lifted seemed to weigh more than the last, as if the very act of unveiling it was an invitation to something even darker. As the chest finally broke free from its sandy tomb, the group gathered around it. Brian, Claire, and the detectives stared at it, hands on their hips, their faces a mix of curiosity and caution. "What now?" James asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Now we open it," Detective Jones said grimly. At that moment, an eerie stillness swept over the beach. The wind stopped. The birds, which had been silent all morning, seemed to watch from the cliffs as if waiting. Even the waves, usually so loud and relentless, seemed to quiet down. And then the chest creaked as its lock was unlocked. The moment it was removed, a strange odor wafted into the air, a heavy, musty smell, like wet earth and something else, something decayed. The team froze, but it wasn't the smell that stopped them. It was the fact that the chest opened so easily, too easily. The lid swung open with a soft groan, revealing something wrapped in dark cloth. The first few officers recoiled slightly, and James's heart pounded harder in his chest. What was inside? What had they just uncovered? Before anyone could reach inside, the sound of approaching sirens signaled the arrival of more backup. They weren't alone anymore. Soon, even the locals had gathered in the distance, their faces etched with curiosity and fear. Word spread quickly in small towns like this. The mystery was growing, and soon, so would the questions. What had James just found? Was it a treasure, a curse, or something far worse? And how did it get there? The chest, now fully lifted from the sand and opened under the cautious watch of the Coast Guard and local police, sat like a wound torn open after years of healing. Inside, wrapped in thick, oil-dark cloth, was something that made every person at the scene instinctively take a step back. Brian was the first to break the silence. He reached in carefully, his gloved hands trembling slightly. The cloth was damp, brittle with age, and stained with streaks of what looked like dried salt or blood. No one spoke as he slowly peeled it back. Underneath the first layer was a glimmer, something metallic yet not polished or modern. It looked handmade, ancient, like it belonged in a museum behind thick glass, not buried under the sand of a California beach. "What is that?" Claire murmured, her voice barely audible. Brian didn't answer. He carefully lifted the object into the light. It was a box, about the size of a small cooler, made of brass or bronze, etched with strange, looping symbols similar to those on the outer chest. It looked almost ceremonial, the kind of thing that might have once been part of a long-lost ritual or rite. Detective Marlowe stepped forward and examined the object with a furrowed brow. "This looks old, pre-industrial, maybe even older. I don't recognize the language or the design." Claire bent down slightly to get a better look. "Those symbols, they match the ones on the outside of the chest." Jones grunted. "So what's in the box?" Brian gave him a look. "Do we really want to open another one?" The question hung in the air like fog, heavy and uncertain. The silence around them deepened, like the entire beach was waiting for their answer. James, who had remained a step behind the group, finally spoke. "You ever hear about the lighthouse fire back in '71? He asked quietly. Everyone turned toward him. "There used to be a small lighthouse station just north of here, beyond the cliffs," he continued. "Burned to the ground one night. 3 keepers gone. Never found. Some folks said it was an accident, faulty gas line. Others said different things, that it was something they brought back from the sea." Claire raised an eyebrow. "You think this is related?" James shrugged. "I don't know, but this place has stories. And that chest, that box inside, it feels like one of them, like it doesn't want to be found." The team exchanged uneasy glances. Brian looked at the box again, then slowly placed it on a steel table they'd brought from the Coast Guard truck. The brass surface seemed to pulse slightly in the sun, as if holding in a breath. Detective Jones pulled out his phone and started snapping pictures. "We'll get this to forensics," he said. "Maybe someone at the university can read these symbols." But before he could finish the thought, Claire reached into the chest again. She pulled out a second object, wrapped in black leather and sealed with a red wax emblem. She held it up. "A book?" Carla said, stepping closer. Claire nodded. "Or a journal." She peeled back the leather cover carefully, trying not to damage it. Inside, the pages were yellowed and crumbling at the edges. Faint writing scrawled in ink danced across the pages, lines in a language none of them could recognize. But interspersed among the words were sketches, and the sketches were chilling. One showed a map, rough, incomplete, but unmistakably marked with this very stretch of coast. Another showed the image of the chest, open, with tendrils, like smoke or shadow, emerging from it. Another showed a circle of people, their faces distorted with what looked like fear or awe, standing around the chest, as if in worship. "What the hell is this?" Marlowe whispered. Brian shook his head. "I don't know, but this isn't just a maritime artifact. This feels ritualistic." As more officers arrived and cordoned off the area, news of the discovery began to spread. Local news vans set up near the parking lot. Curious onlookers stood behind caution tape, craning their necks to catch a glimpse of what was happening. James stayed where he was, arms folded, his eyes fixed on the box. He felt like he had pulled something from the deep, Not just physically, but from time itself. Something buried not just in the sand, but in silence, in secrecy. Eventually, an archaeological consultant from San Francisco State University was called in. Dr. Evelyn Hart, a soft-spoken but brilliant professor of ancient history, arrived with a small team of assistants. Within 10 minutes of examining the box and the journal, she looked up, pale. "These markings," she said, "they resemble a pre-Columbian script, something we've only found fragments of. And the metalwork, it's unlike anything I've seen. This wasn't crafted here, at least not recently. This could be thousands of years old." Thousands. Claire blinked. "You're saying this chest has been buried here for millennia?" "Possibly," Dr. Hart replied. "Or it was brought here from somewhere far older. There are legends, whispers of civilizations lost to time, cultures that sailed further than we thought possible. Some of them carried objects, ritual items, things they believed should never be unearthed." She looked again at the journal. "This language, I don't know it, but I recognize parts of the iconography. This isn't just a relic, it's a warning. A warning." The word sent chills through the group. "What kind of warning?" Jones asked. Dr. Hart hesitated. "I don't want to jump to conclusions, but if I'm right, this chest wasn't meant to be opened. Not ever." That night, the box was transported under heavy guard to a secure facility. The beach was sealed off as a historical site, pending further investigation. But James couldn't sleep, not after what he'd seen. Not with the feeling in his chest that something had been let out, something he didn't understand. And as the days passed, the air in Point Reyes seemed to change. Strange reports trickled in from the locals: missing pets, unexplained lights near the cliffs, shadows where there shouldn't be shadows. People laughed it off at first, but James didn't. He had seen the chest. He had felt the air grow cold the moment it opened. And he couldn't shake the feeling that what they found wasn't just ancient. It was waiting, still waiting. "Now it's your turn. What do you think was in the box? Do you think it was part of a lost civilization's warnings? Or something darker, something never meant for human hands? Let us know what you think in the comments. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell so you won't miss the continuation of this eerie story. And tell us, where are you watching from? Maybe your coast holds mysteries of its own. We're only just beginning to understand what James really found. The days that followed James's discovery blurred into one long stretch of unease. News crews descended on Point Reyes. The chest, the box, the journal, everything was now under intense scrutiny. The discovery became a national story. Headlines screamed about mysterious artifacts unearthed on the California coast. And soon, the whispers of strange disappearances and unexplainable events tied to the chest began to surface. James, however, couldn't shake the feeling that something far darker was behind it all. The authorities, including Dr. Evelyn Hart, continued to investigate the chest. But what they found, what they chose to release to the public, was only part of the puzzle. The rest, locked away in secure government facilities, was not meant for anyone's eyes, not even James's. He had come to think of the chest, its contents, and everything surrounding it as something far beyond his understanding. He felt unsettled, and when he went to sleep, his dreams were filled with shifting shadows, whispering voices and flashes of that dark box. But what disturbed him most was the feeling that the chest wasn't the only thing that had been buried in the sand that day. The box had come from somewhere. Someone had placed it there. Someone, or something, had been waiting. But who and why? A week later, the police chief called James and asked to meet with him. Chief Parker was a gruff man in his mid-50s, with a jaw that always seemed set in anger or frustration. He had little patience for the media frenzy, but even he couldn't ignore the growing unease surrounding the chest. "We need to talk, James," Chief Parker said as they sat across from each other in his cramped office, the faint hum of the radio overhead the only sound between them. "You've been here long enough to know how things work around here, but this is beyond anything we've dealt with." James nodded slowly, his mind still racing with the images from the beach, the chest, the box, the journal. But what he didn't understand was why the authorities were so secretive about the findings. What was in that box? Why had Dr. Hart been so adamant about keeping it under wraps? "I've been hearing things," the chief continued, rubbing the back of his neck. "People talking about strange occurrences since the chest was unearthed. Pets missing. People reporting odd lights at night. Someone even claimed to see a shadow moving along the cliffs as if something was watching. James listened carefully. The reports weren't coming from any official channels. They were the kind of rumors that ran through small towns, whispers behind closed doors. But there was something unsettling about them. Something about the way Chief Parker said it made James's stomach turn. "Do you think it's connected?" James asked, trying to sound neutral, even though his mind was already racing with possibilities. "I don't know," Chief Parker muttered. "But what I do know is this. Ever since that chest was found, things have changed around here. It's like we've opened a door that shouldn't have been opened." James leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" The chief hesitated, his eyes darting toward the window as if expecting someone to overhear. "James, I'm not saying this is anything more than coincidence, but I've seen enough in my time to know that there's more to this than meets the eye. People are scared, and when people get scared, they start talking. That chest, whatever it is, it's become more than just an artifact. It's become a symbol of something dangerous." James's heart skipped a beat. He'd known there was something off about the chest, but hearing it from someone else, a seasoned officer like Parker, made the feeling more real. "What do we do now?" James asked, his voice low. "I don't know," Chief Parker said, his tone grim. "But I need you to be careful. Keep your distance from this. The more we dig into it, the more I'm convinced it's something we shouldn't have found. Someone or something clearly wanted it buried. And now, well, we'll see what happens next." James left the meeting feeling no better than when he'd arrived. The ominous words still hung in the air. "We've opened a door that shouldn't have been opened." As he drove home along the coastal road, the landscape around him seemed eerily still. The ocean stretched out into the horizon, calm and serene. But beneath its tranquil surface, James couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting to rise. The chest, the journal, the mysterious symbols, they were only the beginning. There was something more buried beneath all of this, something ancient and far beyond the reach of modern understanding. The next day, the authorities held a press conference to share their findings with the public. Dr. Hart, along with several experts from the university, stood before the cameras, speaking in measured tones about the box and its possible origins. They revealed that the box's material was unlike anything seen in the Americas before, suggesting it had been crafted in a civilization long lost to history. The symbols etched into the metal, they claimed, resembled a lost language from a culture that once inhabited the region. But the truth, they said, was still out of reach. Dr. Hart spoke to the crowd, explaining that the chest's contents might hold the key to understanding an ancient civilization's rituals, but she cautioned everyone that more analysis was needed. There was talk of radiocarbon dating, of further research into the journal's cryptic entries. It was supposed to sound reassuring, but it didn't. Something felt off. The crowd murmured, sensing that the answers they were receiving only led to more questions. James watched the press conference from the comfort of his home, the eerie unease creeping into his bones once again. He couldn't help but think back to what Chief Parker had said. This was no ordinary find. This wasn't just a relic or a treasure. This was a warning. As the conference ended, James stood up, pacing around his small living room. He kept thinking about the strange sketches in the journal, the ones showing the chest surrounded by a circle of people, their faces twisted in terror. He thought about the map, the markings, the shadowy tendrils rising from the chest. What had they unleashed? The days passed uneventfully, but the weight of the chest's discovery loomed over him. That evening, as James was cleaning up his fishing gear, he received an unexpected call. It was from Carla, the local deputy. "James, you need to come down to the beach," she said, her voice strained. "Something's happened. We've found something, and you need to see it." His heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? What's happened?" "I can't explain it over the phone," Carla replied, her voice low and urgent. "Just get here." Without thinking, James grabbed his jacket and headed out the door, the chilling premonition that something was wrong gnawing at his gut. When he arrived at the beach, the scene was quiet, too quiet. The officers were all gathered around something near the edge of the cliffs, their faces pale as they spoke in hushed voices. "What's going on?" James asked as he approached. Carla turned to him, her expression grim. "We've found another one, another chest." The sight of it made James's heart race. It was identical to the one they had unearthed weeks earlier, rusted metal, strange markings carved into the surface. But this one wasn't buried. It had been left right at the edge of the cliff, placed deliberately. James took a deep breath. This wasn't just a coincidence anymore. Before anyone could speak, a gust of wind swept across the beach, carrying with it the scent of something ancient, something old. And in the distance, there was a soft, almost imperceptible rumble, like the ground itself was shifting, like the earth was waking up. James knew in that moment that the chest had only been the beginning. What came next would be far worse. Do you think the second chest is a sign of something even more sinister? Or is it just a coincidence that another one has appeared? What do you think is really going on in Point Reyes? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and if you're enjoying this unraveling mystery, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss what happens next. Where are you watching from? Let us know. We're curious to see if your area has its own hidden secrets. The second chest sat untouched under the fading light of dusk, its dark surface glinting with the same ancient symbols as the first. But unlike before, no one moved to open it. No eager archaeologists, no brave officers, no curious journalists. They all stood still, eyes fixed on the box, as if the air around it had thickened. James stepped closer, unable to stop himself. He wasn't even sure why. Instinct, perhaps. A pull that had started the moment he saw the first chest lying in the sand. But as he approached the second one, he noticed something different. It wasn't just the chest. Behind it, carved into the dirt, was a circle, a perfect circle, marked with strange glyphs identical to the ones in the journal. They hadn't been drawn recently. The edges were worn, sunken, like they'd been there long before the chest arrived. "What is this?" he whispered. Carla, who had been standing nearby, knelt beside the symbols. "These weren't made recently. You can tell by the way the soil's settled. These markings, they're old, really old." James turned toward her. Then that chest didn't just wash up. Someone placed it there, right in the center. A realization struck them both. The first chest had been buried beneath the sand, as if hidden. But this one, it wasn't hidden at all. It had been offered. Back at the university lab, Dr. Evelyn Hart had spent every night poring over the journal. She hadn't slept much. The symbols haunted her dreams, and her mind raced with a growing theory she couldn't shake. One she wasn't ready to share, until now. She called the authorities that night, demanding to speak with Chief Parker. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "This isn't just a burial site," she said. "It's a seal." "A seal?" he repeated, confused. "Yes," she continued. "The markings, the way the box was placed, the language. It's not just a record, it's an incantation, a containment ritual. And if the first chest was meant to hold something inside, then the second is meant to replace it." Silence. "You're saying we released something," the chief muttered, "and now they're trying to put it back?" "I don't think they're doing anything," Dr. Hart said. "I think the chest is doing it, by itself." She went on to explain that in ancient cultures, certain objects weren't just containers. They were traps, prison cells made not of bars and locks, but of symbols and rituals meant to bind. And if that first chest was disturbed, if what was inside had been let loose, then the only way to contain it again was to offer a new seal. Back on the cliffs, James felt a sudden drop in the temperature. The wind picked up violently. The ocean below roared with a ferocity it hadn't displayed in weeks. Something was coming. The earth trembled faintly beneath their feet, and the lights from the emergency vehicles flickered. Suddenly, a scream rang out. One of the officers had collapsed near the chest, his eyes wide, face pale, lips moving, but no words coming out. James ran toward him, but the man was already slipping into unconsciousness. And then, they saw it, a shape, a figure at the edge of the cliff. Tall, thin, watching. No one moved, no one breathed. James felt it more than saw it. A presence, not flesh and blood, but something ancient, elemental. It stood there, cloaked in shadow, indistinct and yet unmistakably aware. And just as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone. The next morning, the chest was sealed by a team of specialists. It was taken, not to the university, not to a museum, but to a classified facility. Dr. Hart disappeared from the public eye. The journal was never seen again, and the beach at Driftwood Hollow was closed, permanently. The story that made national news slowly faded. Some said it was a hoax. Others said it was a misunderstood archaeological find. But James knew better. He knew what he saw, what he felt, what they all felt. That chest had held something. And when it was opened, something came out. Something that wasn't ready to be forgotten. And now, it's out there, waiting, watching. So let us ask you, what do you think was really inside the chest? An ancient evil? A lost entity sealed away by forgotten people? Or was it all just coincidence? We want to know what you believe. Leave your theory in the comments. Did James really unleash something ancient? Or did the chest simply call back what was always meant to return? Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this one. And tell us, where are you watching from? There might be mysteries near your shoreline too. Until next time, keep your eyes open and never ignore what the ocean tries to bury.